Hi, it's Jason, and you are about to watch a clip from a previous live stream. And in that live stream, I probably had all sorts of extra commentary, personal experience, and things that might be helpful to you. Well, all of that's been cut out, and I get straight to the point in this clip because YouTube demands that for its clips. If you actually want to see all of that other stuff, though, you're going to have to catch me live. And the best way to do that is to subscribe and ring the notification bells so that it tells you when I go, because I'm not that consistent. But anyway, here's all the content that you actually came for. Bye. But today we're talking about a couple of nuisance faults that basically everybody that will witness or works with a Siemens drive, you will come across this first one that we're going to be talking about, and you probably already know it. I've talked about it before. It is fault 7900, and honestly, it is going to be the most common fault and the common source of annoyance in your side. But yeah, we're talking about this fault 7900 fault. Let me get it pulled up so I can look at it. This is one of probably the most common faults that you will find in your Siemens drive technology experience, because it's kind of a catch-all. And because this is a way of the drive telling you that there is some sort of mechanical problem that is keeping the motor from turning. And obviously there can be a lot of different problems that could cause that. One of the things when you're starting up a system with an encoder in it, you might be getting this fault 7900 and you're like, I can go out there and you can turn it by hand, because that's the first thing you want to do. You want to go out there and make sure that you can turn the process. Like, is it free to move? You can see here in the remedy, the first line item on this remedy is check that the motor can freely move, that like we have here. And the problem is that when you are starting up a motor and kind of commissioning it, you'll get this not because the physical motor can't turn, but because, yep, you nailed it. If the encoder is connected the wrong way, because this, when you try to engage the torque and it tries to turn in the correct direction, when you have an encoder in your system, it's going to give the feedback for the actual speed. And so what will happen is it will see that if you try to turn counterclockwise and the motor is, or the encoder is connected up so that the pulses are pulsing clockwise, then what will happen is the speed controller will go and say, hey, I'm not turning in the right direction, I'm moving backwards, so I need to speed up, which makes you speed up even more backwards, and then the motor just faults out, because those are two different values. Your actual values coming in, and the controller is thinking, hey, I want to be going in a positive direction, I'm going in a negative, and so it thinks it can't move. So two things: you can either swap the encoder leads, or you can actually invert the encoder signal in parameter 410. And there's two indices in that parameter, 410, one for the speed controller and one for the position controller. And I would go ahead and say, if you are, when in doubt, turn both of them. So, yeah, so one of the things that when you're starting a system up, you need to get rid of that first motor block fault, because there's two reasons why. You could have the encoder connected correctly, but you could have the motor turning in the wrong direction, meaning your phase leads are off. So you'll get that motor block fault, and you can invert the encoder direction, and then you realize, oh, my motor's actually turning the wrong direction. And then in that case, I would suggest swapping two motor leads and then turning off that motor encoder inversion. Just because, yeah, there's kind of two things that can get you turning in the wrong direction. So that's a fault 7900. But most of the time, you are probably going to be working on a system that is already started up. And in that case, if you get a motor blocked fault, the 7900, what it means is the motor goes into current limit below a certain speed value. There's two thresholds. There's a speed threshold and a current limit, or a torque limit. And it talks about this here. So parameter 2175 is your motor blocked speed threshold. So if it's below that, you'll get this motor blocked. If it's above that, you might get, I believe it's a 7902. Yeah, a motor stalled. So those are essentially telling you the same thing. Hey, I've bumped into current limit for too long. Well, as you may know, so OG brings up a really good point about how to first commission a drive. It says is to set up the drive as a basic volts per hertz control, just to check all of your encoder settings, just to check that the motor is turning in the correct direction, because otherwise you're going to be playing with those two different parameters, and those kind of, is the motor turning in the right direction, or are my encoder leads the wrong way? So very good point there, OG. And just kind of furthering that point, there are some things that'll happen with that, even though your encoder might be connected correctly. So say it's a dual channel with a CD track. So it's like an A-B, so you have 6 total connections. You may have the A, the A0, the B, the B0, C, the C0. You may have all of those connected to the correct place, but if your motor or your encoder is on the non-drive in, the rotation of the motor and the encoder are the same direction. Well, if you have your encoder on the other side of the motor shaft, so kind of facing each other, that's technically 2 different directions, even though it's turning the same direction. So don't think that it's just because of your motor encoder, the connections being wrong, that you can get this kind of encoder inversion. The like physically, your encoder, if it's turning this way, the encoder is turning in a clockwise, whereas the motor is turning in a counterclockwise direction. So just to know that it's not always a wiring issue. Simeon, in drive click encoders, they can have the same issue, just like I'm talking about here. If you can have a non-motor drive click, so the drive click encoder itself could be an external drive click encoder, and so it could be sitting out here on the on that shaft, and the kind of the motor and the encoder are facing each other. That's even though drive click knows which direction that encoder is turning, it's still going to start pulsing in the wrong direction, because it's thinking it's turning counterclockwise or clockwise, and it's just the wrong way. So absolutely same thing, and it's the same parameter for drive click encoders too. That parameter 410 is the same thing. And talking about those 2 indices on that parameter is sometimes your position doesn't always increase with a positive rotation of your motor. And that sounds like it doesn't make sense, but maybe your motor encoder, your actual motor encoder is going in a positive direction, or in the same direction as the the motor shaft. It's rotating in the same direction, but that actually causes a negative position, or it's going in the opposite direction of the position, because if you have gears, your position might be sliding in the opposite direction. So that's just that's a reason why you might have a situation to where you would invert the speed but not invert the position, just so you know. In general though, those cases are very rare, and they are normally on an external type encoders. So The only other thing that I guess that you might run into, because technically you could bring in a non-drive click encoder and you're still technically using drive click with like a SMC module or a SNE module. The signal modules where you bring in like an encoder connection, technically that's converting it into drive click into the backplane. But for drive click motors or drive click encoders, you can absolutely get the same issue. So you remember earlier how I said that the only way that you could catch the full live stream is by catching it live? Well, that's not exactly true, because all of our members have access to the VODs at all times. And if that's something that you're interested in, you should probably check it out. Plus, the higher level members get access to all of the projects that we create on stream. It's pretty cool. It's probably worth it, right?